Hi everyone, welcome to a wrap-up of everything I read in September and October. These will probably be just every month going forward, but I have a bit of a backlog since I just started this channel. The first book I read in September was The Mythmakers, which is a just gorgeously illustrated graphic novel which follows the lives and friendships of C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, kind of through their childhoods and their times in World War I, their Oxford years, and then beyond that. It also details the history of the fantasy genre in general and, how their works changed the popular genre as we know it. I thought this book was very informative, information-rich, both on the lives of the two authors and their writings. It was a fun format. It was a sort of quest through both of their lives by the lion and the wizard, not very subtle stand-ins for the two authors. My only criticism of this one is that it's a very rose-tinted account, kind of no critique of Oxford's blatant misogyny at the time, nor either of the authors, or any discussion of Lewis's potential queerness, but, it was a good book anyways. I will probably give it to my dad for Christmas. The song I chose to go for this one is The Ring Goes South by Howard Shore. This was an easy one. It's just from the Lord of the Rings soundtrack. The second book I read in September was Inverse Cowgirl. I picked this up as one of those blind date with the books from the library. It is Alicia Roth Weigel's memoir via tattoos, covering her life as an intersex woman from childhood, growing up, being taught to hide her intersexuality, to college years, to her eventual work as an activist in Austin, Texas, which is my hometown. I think this was probably the first book I'd read from an out intersex author, and definitely the first about intersex identity. From that standpoint, this book was very invaluable, informative. I do appreciate that this was a holistic memoir. Weigel isn't only talking about being intersex, but also her life, her privilege, her work, her experience as a woman. I did find that interesting, though I wish that more of the focus had been her activist work, the kind of the what, who, etc. Maybe that can be her book too. And I don't know, saying you'll get flamed for referencing Harry Potter in a 2023 book won't stop me from flaming you. As a queer activist, she probably should know and understand the harms of that. Yeah, I gave this book 3.75 stars. And the song I chose for it was Camille by Anna Roxanne, who is an intersex artist. Next, I read my only volume of manga for the month, since I was waiting on a library hold for so long for the next volume, which was Fullmetal Alchemist, volume 23. This is the Colonel Mustang moment, if you know, you know. I really like Fullmetal Alchemist. I won't go too into detail here because, spoilers, this is the final arc of the manga. Yeah, I love Mustang as a character, I love his arc, and I love everything that happens in this arc for him. My song for this one was Crime and Punishment by Akira Senju. This is obviously off the Fullmetal Alchemist soundtrack. Next, I read maybe my least favorite book of the year, or rather, I finished it because I started reading this book back in August and for some reason didn't DNF it. That should have been a sign. Fire by Kristin Cashore follows Fire, a monster, which essentially means she's brightly neon-colored and a redhead, girl of about 17 who's kind of trying desperately not to be her father, who was a monster in many ways. She, like all monsters, human and animal, attracts the attention of other monsters and can kind of influence the minds of people in general. She travels to the palace to meet the royal family and advise them. This book is a meandering, lazily foreshadowed, episodic saga in which Fire is arbiter of what is morally just at court, meaning she's constantly apologizing and doing mental backbends around the circle of shitty men she's surrounded by. I see why people like this book. It's not for me. This book also kind of, slight spoilers, circumvents its own thesis by making two characters' literal learned skills match their twist parentages. I don't know what to tell you. Archery is not a genetic skill unless you're a eugenicist. Yeah, I am fully done with Kristin Cashore after this book. The song I chose for this one was Limbo by Clover County, which is a song about a good Christian girl apologizing for the men she's dating, which felt very appropriate. Fifth book I read this month was Yucatan 1512 by Alex Vede and Mark Wahlbeck. I picked this up for a library graphic novel book club, which I didn't end up going to. That is kind of a theme here in this video. I won't go too into detail because it's so short. This is a book about mechs versus conquistadors, and it's super neat. It's gorgeous, too. I liked it a ton. It's got a concise, very satisfying story. I love the art style, especially the way that the different languages portrayed. I would definitely recommend checking this out because it's such a quick read. I don't usually pick songs for books that I finish in one day, so I don't have a song for this one. The next book I read was Cat Person by Seo Kim. I give this one 3 stars. It's a very cute cat comic anthology, though I wish there were more cat comics, or the ones that were very cute and in the first third of the book were spread throughout instead, because they were just better than the rest of the comics. Yeah. But I really like the art in this book, and it was quite funny. The next book I read was It Is Wood, It Is Stone by Gabriella Burnham. I picked this up from a stand at the library, so good for the library. This book follows Linda, who is a dissatisfied, unemployed writer who has moved with her husband to Sao Paulo, Brazil. In meeting women of color there, she learns about her own blind spots and her husband's and the rich people around her, and it's just the rich white professors of it all. I like what this novel is trying to say, and it does come right out and state it John Green style in the middle of a random scene. Your personal growth should not come at the expense of another's. However, kind of like with many litfic books, the litfic tropes just get in the way of actually showing that message. It's kind of the dramatic externalization of internal conflict in a fully ridiculous way, the cheating on your husband with a woman, the emotional navel-gazing about avant-garde art. Like, I don't know, what could this book be without that baggage? Who could Linda, the main character, be if she actually worked on herself? We might never know. I gave this book 2.5 stars, and the song I chose was Aguas de Marco, the Alice Regina cover, which is the song that the book is named after. It's a good song. It's a better song than this book. The next book I read, I also gave 2.5 stars. It was Everything is Teeth by Evie Wyld, which is a memoir about the author's childhood anxieties and apprehension about sharks as she spent summers in Australia. I really liked the kind of part collage, part cartoon style of this book, but I found it to be a bit meandery, kind of more of a journal entry than a memoir. Still, the fear of open bodies of water is very relatable to me, especially somewhere like Australia. The next book I read was It Will All Hurt. I actually finished this on the same day as the previous book, by Farel Dalrymple. This book I gave 3 stars. It's a kind of nonsensical series of comics following a group of folks coming together in a nightmare land to defeat an evil wizard. And I don't go for the, like, whoa, that's random type of comics very often, but I did really like the art style of this one. It's kind of like a pen notebook sketch type of style that is very, very compelling. And kind of the overall narrative and cast of characters was very fun. It really felt like kids playing make-believe, which was neat. Yeah. It was a bit hard to follow at times, but I did really like it. The next book I read this month, I gave 4.5 stars to. It was part historical fiction, part critique of historical fiction as a genre, detailing the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich by Joseph Gapchik and Jan Kubis. This is one of those books where, kind of to get to the interesting history, and it is a very well-researched story, you have to put up with the author's self-importance and personal reflection and womanizing. I wouldn't read another book written in this style, but it was very illuminating to see some of the forms that Czech and Slovak resistance took during World War II, and to see up close the path to absolute fucking monstrosity that Germany took in that time. Very dismissive of every woman included in the story. That's not surprising given the author, honestly, from the parts of himself he puts in the story itself. Also, I am not sure who retitled the book, because the title the author wrote that he wanted to title the book is not this one, but it was a choice to title it something so close to a dog whistle. Huge side eye on that. The song I chose for this was The Resist Stance. It was maybe a gimme option. And the last book I read this month was The Dispossessed. This was a reread for my Discord book club. and I truly enjoyed it. The Dispossessed is one of those books that I read maybe 5 or 6 years ago that, like, definitely changed my brain chemistry, but it's been a couple years, so I didn't really know if it was still good, because I've changed a lot over the past few years. And yeah, it holds up. The Dispossessed follows Shevek, a brilliant physicist from the quote-unquote utopian anarchist moon Anaris, both as he grows up and does his main physics work, and on his revolutionary trip to Eurus, the blue capitalist hellscape planet that his people were exiled from generations ago. His ideas are radical everywhere. This book is kind of a masterclass in world building, sci-fi storytelling, idealism versus practice, that sort of stuff. It solidly changed my brain chemistry a second time. Through everything, my favorite part is how Le Guin shows not only a radically different society, and maybe a better one to the one we live in, but kind of what it is to be radical to the point of disownment within that society. As it turns out, no system enjoys criticism. The songs I chose for this book were Resurrections by Lena Raine, because I was playing Celeste during this time, and if you know what happens in the Celeste storyline during that chapter, it felt very apt for the Dispossessed. And then I also picked Halfway by Magdalena Bay. Alrighty, now getting into October, I read a lot of manga this month, and I basically just lumped together the volumes of the different series into one thing to talk about, so just know I maybe didn't read all of these volumes concurrently as I'm talking about them. First up, I finished Fullmetal Alchemist. So this was Fullmetal Alchemist volumes 24 through 27. The conclusion. This has been an absolutely fantastic reread for me. Fullmetal Alchemist has influenced my own writing a lot, and this final arc is half the reason why. It's really good. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend. It is, unlike some other shonen manga I could name off the top of my head, it is iconic for a reason. This arc especially is so well paced. It wraps up so many character arcs so well. Pretty flawless. It was nice also to see some scenes that weren't in Brotherhood, as I hadn't read all of the way to the end of the manga before. I rated these books pretty much between 4.5 and 5 stars. That's pretty unsurprising. The songs I chose for these were 1 Minute to Midnight by Justice, Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush, and Epilogue by Akira Senju. Next up, technically book number 5, was The Queue by Amy Tintera. I was kind of shocked by this because I don't tend to pick up YA books anymore, but I managed to read 2 great ones this month. The Queue is set in an alternate Austin, Texas, which has been turned into a temporary and then permanent quarantine zone for a virus that ran rampant there. This virus hasn't escaped that area yet, and it tends to kill like 30 to 50% of people on first infection, so they really, really, really don't want it to. Within that setting, Maisie Rojas has spent her whole life there, tied into the family that runs the southern portion of the queue. And Lennon Pierce, who was an outsider and the son of the presidential candidate, until he got kidnapped and dropped into the queue. If he can't leave within 72 hours, I think it's 72 hours, I didn't check that, he will be stuck there forever. The queue came highly recommended to me by a friend of mine, and yeah, it has great characters, pretty funny banter, really interesting world building, and it doesn't just stop at interesting world building, it tells an interesting story within that. Kind of the race against the clock feature keeps the tension high the entire time. Yeah, my only nitpick is that I did want more Austin-y details as an Austinite, but that's a very minor nitpick, I'll acknowledge. So yeah, I did end up giving this book 5 stars. The song I chose for this was Tomorrow's Money by MCR. Next, in a thing I enjoyed that came completely out of the blue, I read Marriage Toxin volumes 1 through 3. And I basically rated these 4 and 5 stars. I kind of picked this up from the library the day I finished Fullmetal Alchemist because they had the first 3 volumes in, so I was like, oh, I will just read the first volume, and if I like it, I'll check out the other ones. And then I really liked it. Marriage Toxin follows Gero, Master of Poisons, in a family line of semi-magical poison assassins. His grandmother basically lays down this ultimatum to find a wife and continue the family line, or else she'll make Gero's youngest sister, or younger sister, marry and have a kid. But his younger sister's already in a happy relationship with a woman, so he figures he'll find someone to marry, even though he's super awkward. He also semi-accidentally recruits a marriage swindler to be his marriage counselor. What follows is kind of a hilarious fighting-focused manga where Gero hones his charms by helping out the ladies that are in trouble. All while May is maybe slowly falling in love with him, and he's vaguely falling in love with May. Maybe I'm just projecting. I was really not expecting to like this manga as much as I did. It's really funny, all of the characters are gorgeous and well realized. It's queer inclusive despite being a Shonen Jump manga about a man looking for a wife. Check this one out. My song for this one was Arms Tonight by Mother Mother. Next up, I read Words Are My Matter by Ursula Le Guin. I kind of have been on a Le Guin kick, I guess. This is Le Guin's final collected nonfiction writings, which were mostly essays, book reviews, and forewords to special editions of sci-fi books. It was a good smorgasbord of opinions from one of my favorite authors. In a collection like this, some pieces are obviously going to be more compelling than others. I especially loved Operating Instructions. Le Guin has a really good, descriptive, and understandable way of talking about things in fiction that I've noticed but haven't seen written about, really. Wishful thinking, for example, which I am stealing in my own book reviews. I gained a lot of insight for my own writing from this one, and a lot of book recommendations. The song I chose for this book was Thank You for the Music by ABBA, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Next up, I read Land of the Lustrous by Haruko Ichigawa. These were kind of in the 3-star to 4-star range. I think it'll get better though. Yeah. This is one of my good friend's favorite manga. Land of the Lustrous follows the living gem Phosphophilite, who is a very weak gem who breaks easily and is searching for purpose. The gems all live in this kind of school, watched over by Kongo-sensei, who may or may not be hiding something. This manga has already made me cry twice, and I can tell it will continue to do so. Fosa's development as a character is very iconic and thematically Buddhist. In these volumes, I really liked the exploration of physical strength that is happening. My only nitpick, especially with the first volume before I got to recognize all of the gems, was that I really wish it was full color. Mostly because I have seen the first season of the anime for this, and it's so gorgeous and the gems work so well in color. But it's a manga, so that's probably an unrealistic expectation. It's got some absolutely shocking page turns. The art is gorgeous. I will probably finish this series up in the next month or so, and I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna make me cry. I know it. The songs I picked for this were Domino by Magdalena Bay, Shelter by Porter Robinson, and Sad Machine by Porter Robinson. Another book I picked up for a book club that I didn't end up going to, although that one was not my fault. I did not get the Zoom link in time. I read The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. This one I gave 4 stars to. The Only Good Indians is about 4 Blackfeet men who killed something they really shouldn't have on a hunt they shouldn't have been on in the first place. I enjoyed it a lot. Revenge and horror go hand in hand, and the sense of paranoia and then dramatic irony here are absolutely awesome. The book also manages to be a good commentary on being indigenous at the present moment. Also, Act 3 happens, and it's awesome. I do understand why we have a certain perspective character in this book, but I also kind of wanted the book to find a way to be outside that character's perspective somehow. Probably that wouldn't have worked, but I don't know. I wanted that mystery. By the way, definitely look up trigger warnings if certain stuff affects you in horror books. This book is absolutely brutal with certain topics. For songs, I picked Check the Lock by Clipping and If I Had a Heart by Fever Ray. Next up, this was a short story that I read for my Discord book club, Infect Your Friends and Loved Ones by Tori Peters. This story follows an unnamed protagonist through her tumultuous relationship with Lexi, who is a fellow trans woman. After a messy breakup, the protagonist reconnects with Lexi, only to find out that she and some friends have developed a virus that's main side effect is that no one can produce hormones. I enjoyed this story overall. It does a really good job of using a split timeline and has an excellent discussion of marginalized anger and acceptability politics and community. At the same time, Lexi and the protagonist's relationship is this tumultuous mix of magnetism and codependency and crossed boundaries and understanding that's both really tense to read and really compelling. I would have given this book 4 stars, or this story 4 stars, if not for the weird detour the author took to talk about a man who went crazy on the weird apocalypse testosterone, which fully ties into the moral panic of tea making you abusive, and also didn't super seem necessary to include in a story about trans women. Still, I really like this overall. It was a good time. It was a good discussion too. Song for this one, I picked Covers by King Princess. And then last up this month, the other mysterious 5-star YA that I'm never able to track down except once in a blue moon and twice this month was Bianca Torre is Afraid of Everything by Justine Piecella-Winans. I picked this book up from a banned books display at the local library, so I should have known that it was going to do me right. Bianca Torre is a book about an incredibly anxious teen birder who stumbles across a murder and then a conspiracy. At the same time, Bianca is beginning to realize that they're non-binary. I had a ton of fun with this book. Bianca's voice throughout is very snarky in that, like, classic YA way. And the cast of characters in their life is vibrant and supportive and just wonderful to read about. I think this book does a good job of portraying anxiety in particular, as Bianca finds out over time that maybe they were surrounded by more allies than they thought, and that also is balanced out by them unveiling this conspiracy and realizing that, oh, you can't just automatically trust certain people. I just kind of read books like this and wish there were more of this sort of thing when I was a teenager. Songs for this one, I picked Ballad of a Homeschooled Girl by Olivia Rodrigo and 6 Feet by I Don't Know How But They Found Me. So that is everything I read this month and last month. Yeah, pretty good reading months overall. I'm hoping the last 2 months of the year shape up similarly. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.